Stick out your hands like this. All right, give us a good clap. Let's go. We are ready to go. Actually, we can clip. Do you want to clip up or you want to hold it like a microphone?
Kind of like it.
All right. I like microphone, but
Yeah.
I've had some feedback that people don't like.
Oh.
But no, I don't care. I'm all to do.
Yeah, it kind of feels nice having something in your hand.
Yeah, it's like a nice little grip skis.
Yeah, like a fidget toy.
All right. Welcome back to the show, Respectfully Inspired with Aussie Films. Today, I'm here with Cole Brummond. He has a crazy story. He grew up in a trailer basically on a farm in Oregon as well. He got in many fights growing up, even in one in which he fought his stepdad almost to the death, from my understanding. He has had near-death experiences where he's met God. He has crazy experiences where he's healed people with prayers. His life is just absurdity. He got robbed at knife point. I don't even know how you're like a normal human being, but you seem so normal when I hang out with you.
We're just posted, man.
Yeah. So we're gonna really dive into this. Again, some of my podcasts don't even talk about God, and some are gonna be heavily God, like this one. And so I just want to set the intentions with a prayer, because whenever I talk about God, it's really important that I represent Him right. And so, God, could you just please bless this podcast? Help it to reach whoever it needs to reach. God, help me to share Cole's story in a way that represents you well, in a way that someone who needs to hear it can hear it. God, just help me to ask the right questions and help Cole's story to reach the right people. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. It's good.
Yeah, I'm not, this guy's the prayer king.
No.
He's actually like the guy I model my prayers off of after, and I've told him that many times.
Hey,
but,
we all model our prayers off of somebody.
yeah, see, bro, even that answer is just better than my answer. But I want to start off with growing up in a trailer.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a movie scene thing.
Yeah.
What was growing up in a trailer like?
It was, up until this point in my life, I didn't know that it was like any different than what other people grew up with.
Yeah.
So I grew up like, my mom and my dad were photographers, and they traveled to different action sports events all across the country. And so the majority of like my like really young days were spent competing in these action sports events while they worked at them.
Yeah.
Because it just allowed for me to get like a lot of ins and a lot of things for a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
So I was able to do a lot of sports. Like I was in rodeos, I was in motocross, freestyle skiing, boxing, like all of these things, just because we were on the road and that's what we were like involved with most of the time. So my entire childhood just consisted of being in a truck and a trailer, driving, or being on a dirt bike track, or being like on a rodeo grounds.
Wait, so you didn't like, that's interesting. I wasn't expecting that answer. So it wasn't, to you, it didn't feel like I'm poor thing. It felt like this like adventure.
Well, I was rich.
Oh, you were rich. Okay,
Well,
wow.
we weren't rich, but like
But you felt like this was an awesome lifestyle where you got to do all these adventure sports.
yeah, because all my homies did the same things too. Like I had a bunch of friends who were in the rodeos and who were super good at like riding bulls. And then I had a bunch of friends who are now like some of the best motocross racers in the entire world. And so everywhere I went, I always felt like I had a home at these events, because although they were different events and different people, like through different sports, the community was the same for each sport.
Yeah.
So I always had a community to kind of fall back on during those events when I may have felt lonely or disconnected.
Yeah.
I always had some homies there to keep me entertained.
That's really interesting. I want to ask about rodeos, because that's like, it's almost like again, it's like a movie thing that I like hear of, but I'm like, do those really exist?
Yeah, legit.
What do you do in a rodeo?
I was a mutton buster.
What's that mean?
You ride sheep.
Ride sheep?
Yeah. So when you're under 50
legal?
pounds, I think you have to be under like 75 or 50 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mutton bust. So you work your way up from sheep to calves, from calves to steer, and from steer to bull.
What's a steer?
A steer is like a teenage cow. It has really sharp horns.
Dude, that's so. I feel uncultured. Wait, so it's mutton busting?
Yeah, mutton busting.
And what was riding sheep like?
Dude, it was scary because some rodeos, they varied.
Yeah.
They either had sheep that were shaved bald.
Oh yeah.
You could see their cojones, like they're just angry looking sheep, or they were big fuzzy things.
Yeah.
and you had a lot of wool to hold on to, and you were just like, you were chilling.
Yeah.
So when you
So
get these,
you want the wool ones?
yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're toast.
Bro, why are you even allowed to ride the naked one?
I have no clue. Man. Make it more of a challenge.
It's like more of a challenge.
Yeah.
Damn, that's hilarious. So, when did you kind of settle down and like get in a school? Because I know you said you went to a school. Did you always live in a trailer, or did you end up living in a house, or how did that go?
So in 3rd grade, actually, my parents split up.
Yeah.
And I had the choice to either go live with my dad as he continued to live in our trailer,
Yeah.
or I could have gone and lived with my mom in like a normal residential neighborhood. And I chose to go live with my mom because I didn't know what living with my dad would entail. And I didn't know at the time, but there was a lot of like manipulation and things that were going on within the relationship that my mom was in. That kind of led me to live with her.
Yeah.
And so I would spend less time after that in the trailer with my dad.
Yeah. Interesting. So I want to get to a topic which is fighting as a young kid. And I come from Carlsbad, which a lot of people would describe this as like a rich white town. And in my schools, there wasn't fights. There was maybe one fight a year and everyone knew about it. It was like, dude, there was a fight this week.
Yeah.
It was like the biggest deal. The only other experience I ever had, I never got in a fight personally. The only experience I ever had with fights was in middle school. We used to people used to arrange times to go to the bathroom. And there would be like body shots in the bathroom.
Yep.
But even that was kept pretty clean. It was like people respected not hitting the face, and you recorded it, and then it was like a scheduled thing. I mean, you'd have like 10 kids in class trying to go to bathroom.
All in 3rd period.
Like, I have a condition. I need to go to the bathroom at 12:34 p.m.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's every day at the same time.
Yeah. But you got in some serious fights, and I want to ask you 2 questions. I want to start with, why do you think kids get in fights?
I'll speak from the behalf of like a guy's perspective, because I don't want to speak for like women. I know guys fight a lot more than women.
Yeah.
And I've seen it a lot more prevalent in my life. I strongly feel that the only reason a guy will ever resort to fighting is a lack of love or like a lack of a father figure and disciplinary action at home.
Yeah.
Like for my situation, I had there were no boundaries that I couldn't cross. My parents didn't set up any boundaries.
Yeah.
I could do whatever I want. And at this time, my dad, he wasn't even really around, he was just traveling in his trailer. So I was just like pissed at everything and everyone. And I was like, screw it. Like, just fight. Anything happen, you just fight. That was my reaction to most situations, is to just get aggressive.
Just fight. So then I want to elaborate and ask, like, could you tell me about some of those times fighting as a kid? What were they like? Like, how did they affect you? And just,
I think, so there are a number of times where like I got myself into fights. I'll throw myself under the bus here and talk about my first fight. I actually lost it.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say this was like my first fight, but this is my first big boy fight where like I was I was a bigger age, or like I was a little bit older, so it was more serious. I was hanging out one day with a bunch of friends, and this dude that was an acquaintance we knew, who we kind of didn't really, we weren't so fond of him. He pulled up and he was just kind of giving us some crap, and then my smart mouth, of course, had to say something, and I was just like, I think I wanted to say something like, bro, I would beat you in a fight, or some stupid manly thing, like trying to be macho. And all of a sudden he's like, all right, dude, let's go fight then.
Yeah.
And I'm like, crap, like I didn't actually want to do this. I was just trying to look cool.
Yeah.
And we go out and fight, and this dude's well over 2 times bigger than like both horizontally and vertically. Man, it's just built. And I broke my hand in like 3 different places. My thumb was sticking straight up, like the bone of my thumb.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I lost that fight because my hand was broken and I quit, and then he punched me in the back of the head when I was walking away. So I'll take that L.
Oh, and what was, like, I mean, it's funny because you speak about it so casually, but like, what came after? Like, did you feel like, did you go to the hospital? Did you rethink life, or was it just like on to the next day?
On to the next day, man. I mean, I did go to the hospital because I broke my hand.
Yeah.
And I had to get a cast for it.
And what did your parents think? Your mom think?
I just told her I got in a fight.
And she's just like, all right.
Yeah.
Damn.
That's it. Because at that point, there had been a lack of discipline for enough time to where I realized that they couldn't do anything with me.
Yeah.
Like I could do whatever I want, I could say whatever I want, and I'm not going to get in trouble for it.
You know what's interesting is I often think back about my high school experience or my middle school experience, and I was a pretty good kid, and I had very good parents who raised me well, but I think back on it, and I always feel like, why was I worried about getting in trouble in high school? Why was I worried about getting in trouble in middle school? And I realized that whether it was my parents or the teachers or whatever, like I always had this illusion of them, like everything felt like a big deal. And sometimes I look back and I'm like, well, why was I scared of getting in trouble? Like a referral doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Like detention doesn't mean anything. But like it's funny because hearing someone's story like yours, it's like, yes, it doesn't mean anything, but that like illusion of discipline, like keeps you on the right path.
Yeah. No, I think that I broke that illusion of discipline like really early, and that allowed me to kind of escape that little like illusion and just thought of the like authorities. I never feared them because I had dealt with them so often.
Yeah.
It's like, screw it. If I get in trouble again, I knew a referral wasn't going to do anything to me.
Yeah.
I knew getting suspended wasn't going to do anything to me, so I just kept going with it.
Dude. Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, that's really interesting. This is like up for you if you want to talk about this or not talk about this, but I was going to ask you about the time where you told me once about how you beat this kid up and like why you later felt bad about it. Could you share that story if you're willing?
Oh, of course. So this has happened like multiple times to me. Like I'm a super loving person.
One of the most loving. I can testify.
I don't like to fight, but like if it comes down to it, like that's just something that's built into me, and that like I will like I won't back down from it. So at this time, a student at like a rival school of ours in town had posted a video of him walking up behind a sweet little innocent kid who was holding hands with his girlfriend in the hall during a passing period. And the bully, he punched him in the back of the head as hard as he could.
Yeah.
Knocked him down, and his girlfriend was obviously crying, and he was crying because like he got hit in the back of the head. And he's a much smaller person too. And so this video went viral around our town, and everyone's sharing it. Everyone thought it was so funny that this kid was just getting bullied and punched in the back of the head. And so I found out who did it, and I messaged him, figured it out, and eventually like we met up to fight. He tried to pull some shady stuff, and I was aware of it, and so thankfully like nothing like bad happened, but he did end up getting hurt pretty bad, and I took out a lot of anger on him that had nothing to do with him. A lot of the anger that I feel like occurs in a fight has nothing to do with the two people who are actually fighting. A lot of it has to do with what they're experiencing outside of that and at home and things like that. So for me, I had been dealing with an abusive cokehead stepdad, and I just lost my grandma who I lived with for a long time, and all this stuff was just falling apart around me. So I was like, screw it, like I'll take your head off. If somebody says it's gonna get taken off, like might as well be the person who's right in front of me causing trouble. And I hurt him pretty bad, and then one of his best friends had actually committed suicide because a kid bullied him to death 1 month prior to this. And this kid claimed to be one of the best friends of said student who was bullied to death. And for that to be like, for him to claim to be friends with that student who was bullied to death, and for him to actively be bullying other people, and possibly to the point of suicide, is super like contradictive to me. So I called him out for it, and I just told him like, hey man, you claim to be friends with this kid. Well, this kid just committed suicide for the same very thing that you're doing to another student. Like, how would you feel if he just went home and he took his life? Like, you would feel terrible. And so, we chatted for a little bit, argued a little bit, and that was that, man.
But I think, I mean, dude, it's so funny because I almost feel like I need to translate because you say things so casually, but it's like there was this kid who hurt this other kid, and you went and basically DM'd him and set up a fight, and he beat the F out of this kid. But later what you realize, and I think this is important to identify, is that so much of these situations, like, it's pain talking. Like, you were fighting this kid because you had this pain at home with your stepdad doing drugs and your grandma, your best friend dying, and you took it out on this kid. And he had a friend die, and he went and he bullied other kids, and he did these messed up things. But like, ultimately, like, the reason you guys were both in that situation to fight is because you had, like, it was pain talking.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't you guys talking. That's like so important to identify. And
Yeah.
it's like almost every time someone does something like really bad or really evil, like, I feel like you have to understand that something in their past made them that way. Something it's literally the pain talking. And you had mentioned your stepdad and how he did drugs, and I want to continue on this idea of fighting. You once fought your stepdad in a fight that was almost like to the death.
Yeah.
Can you explain, how did you get to that point with your stepdad, and what was that fight like?
Yeah, so growing up, like my stepdad, he kicked all of our family out, like before they're 18. So all my brothers got kicked out, and I was the last one. I was the youngest child. So growing up with him and not having my brothers around, as all of them were kicked out, kind of allowed for him to take a lot of his aggression out on my mom and me, us being the only people in the house at the time. And going into my senior year of high school, I knew that my mom, if I ever wanted to have like a strong and stable relationship with her, that she had to escape like the relationship that she was in. And she knew that as well, but she was very unwilling to, I think, leave because she depended on him, and he made her depend on him for so many years. And I forced my mom to pack up a U-Haul truck, and I packed it for her. My brother helped, and we basically forced her to move to California.
Yeah.
And all in the span of like a day. And then from that very moment on, when my mom left, my stepdad, he came to me, he told me, I'm not going to buy food for the house until she comes back.
Yeah.
I refuse to take care of you until she comes back. Do whatever you want. Don't mess up my house. You can stay here. You don't stay here. Like, I don't care. Do whatever you want. And that was that. So senior year of high school, I spent most of my senior year homeless, like just couch surfing. I didn't want to be surrounded by my stepdad, and I didn't want to go home to a house that didn't have food to eat. So I depended largely on like my best friends and their families to take care of me, as a lot of them knew my situation and were very willing to help me out in times of need. And after senior year of high school, it was the day after graduating actually, I had nowhere to stay. A lot of people were just out of town traveling, doing things for graduation. And it was also in the mix of COVID, so it was a little bit harder to see people. And I had nowhere to sleep, so I stayed with my stepdad. He came in the room in the middle of the night, like late at night, maybe midnight, and he was with a bunch of friends playing poker. They had been snorting coke all night and drinking and, you know, having a boys' night, and my mom wasn't there to stop anything. So things progressed, and, you know, they got a little bit too intoxicated. He barged in my room, and he wanted to fight for no reason. He said, I want to wrestle you, Cole. And I was like, hey, man, it's a terrible idea. Let's not do this. And he dragged me out of my bed, and we started to wrestle. One thing led to the next, and emotions started to escalate. Apparently he had been wanting to like hurt me for my entire life. Because I was always the oddball. I was like, he could never screw with me or never get to me. Like, he kicked everyone out because he got under their skin, and he was very good at manipulating people. And that caused for a lot of people to freak out at him. And then him using that as an out, like, oh, you freaked out at me. You're a terrible person. Leave, never like talk to me again. And he could never do that to me because I just knew his tricks. And so I think that really frustrated him from a young age, which allowed him to kind of build up that anger. And I was always very defensive of my mom, as no one else would protect her or stand up for her. I never had a problem voicing my opinion and voicing the fact that I didn't feel like what he was saying or doing was healthy or right. So then, you know, a day after graduating, I found myself at home. We're wrestling. And he's much bigger than me. He wrestled all throughout high school, so he's much older too. I'm 18 years old at the time. He slams me on the ground, and he has my face in the carpet, and he puts all of his body weight on my head and neck. And then I tap out, and he whispers in my ear that he'd been waiting for this and that he didn't want to let go, and he wasn't going to let go. So at that moment, I had to choose, like, either I was going to be stuck in that position and potentially like die or just get really hurt as I was being choked, or like freak out and do something and hurt him back. And all within like a couple seconds, I got a rush of adrenaline. I picked him up over the top of my head, slammed him on his neck. And before I knew it, he was completely unconscious as I choked him out. And I wouldn't let go of him. And, you know, I really regret, like, I wouldn't say really regret, but I regret choking him to the point where he passed out, just as he would have done to me, because I never wanted to stoop down to that level. I never wanted things to get to that point. But like you were saying earlier, man, it's like there was so much emotion built up and so many years of trauma, especially from him, where it was like he put himself in the wrong position at the wrong time, and I hurt him really bad. And so the day after that, I packed a U-Haul truck. I called my friends while he was at work, and I got one of my best friends to help me move. We packed the truck, drove 16 hours all within a day, and moved to California and never looked back.
Dude, that's crazy. You have such an intense childhood. I mean, and that is like your origin story of even being here, which is a lot to think about. At this point in your story, correct me if I'm wrong, you are an atheist at this point.
Yeah, I had no belief in God. I'd never been to a church. I'd never really even had a relationship with someone who also has a relationship with God.
So you're here, you're in California, you move here, you're pretty broke, you're reunited with your mom, right? But the trauma didn't necessarily leave you. You ended up getting in trouble here. Can you take me to the point where you got robbed at knife point in California? And could you also elaborate on why do you think like things like that continue to happen to you?
So after moving to California, I think like things took like a really sharp turn and got a lot harder than I was expecting them to. I thought that everything was gonna be great down here. That I would come down here, be reunited with my mom, and have a lovely life. That was completely opposite of what I expected. So one night I was walking down the streets of Oceanside with one of my good friends, and he's a smaller dude, maybe like 5 foot flat, so not too big, not too intimidating. And we were just cruising, filming a music video for a guy named Desi Hollow, and the music video was called Late Night, so obviously we needed to be out at night. It was only 7:30, 8 o'clock, but it was winter, so the sun set earlier, right? And we were cruising, guys pulled up on us, and instantaneously I knew we were getting robbed. Like, without a doubt in my mind, I'd been in situations similar, and I was like, these guys are trouble. They're going to try and rob us, right? I no doubt in my mind. And as soon as I was processing that in my head, they jumped on my friend, and they started scratching his eyes and punching him and trying to attack him and take his camera gear. At the time, my camera gear was the only thing that I had left, to hold on to. We had no food at the house. We didn't even have forks, or we didn't have silverware or plates, or bowls to even eat out of. We were eating off of rewashed cardboard and plastic. So I had nothing to lose at this time. And I was not about to let someone take everything I did have to lose, which was my camera. And I freaked out. One of the guys was, so they're both on my friend. And one of the guys was trying to punch him, and I ran up and I hit him and knocked him out. His friend pulled out a knife on me and then proceeded to like lunge at my stomach, where I took my phone, the corner of my phone, and I hit him over the top of the head as he grazes my shirt with his knife and completely shattered the front, back, and the whole corner of my phone was gone because I hit him in the head so hard. They get up again because they're on drugs, so they start leveling up. I don't know if you know this about people on drugs, but if you knock someone out and they're on like some PCP or something, they level up. So these guys just got stronger. They get up, they're revived. Crazy. Bro, they got 3 hearts left. They're freaking ready to go. And we just start brawling. I'm screaming for my life because it's in the middle of public. There are people gathering. Someone's trying to stab me. The other dude has his hands wrapped up with a metal bar inside of his hands. And I only got hit one time. I fought both of them off, knocked both of them down multiple times. And then I eventually got out. And this was during COVID, so it was lockdown. There's tents in the street where restaurants would set up, the outdoor restaurants at this time. And so it was just reopening. There's just people starting to be outside. And I had booked it straight through one of these outdoor seating areas at a restaurant. And it was just like the movies where I'm telling you, like, people were screaming. I was yelling. I had a backpack on and like my camera gear. And this dude is like knocking stuff down, like chasing me, trying to run through like the place that I was, and we're juking people out, like running, dodging each other. And I eventually got cornered, and they swung on me again, and one person took a swipe with the knife, but I was able to get out and to keep running, and I just ran home. I ran home, but freaking got out of there.
Dude, and what about your friend? He ran it as well?
Yeah, he was already on, like, by the first punch that I threw,
Yeah.
I told him to leave and call the cops. And so he ran as far as he could
Did
away.
the cops come?
They laughed. As my knuckles were all broken, like all of them. And it was just one lump across my knuckle right here.
Yeah.
One big lump of blood. And I was like showing the cops I was all beat up. And they just started laughing. They thought it was the funniest thing ever. They were like, oh, so you telling me some little scrawny white kid with ripped jeans and Jordan 1s on just beat up 2 gang members with like weapons? And they all, he radioed, he caught his friends. Now there's like 10 cops all posted up right here. And they're just laughing. They think it's so funny. They're like, dang, bro, a new one would come. This is the kid? What? And it was the stupidest thing in the whole world.
Bro, that is so, like, how is that, like, terrible. Cops blow my mind.
Yeah.
Wow, that's just such a wild, you have such, like, a reoccurring theme of fighting in your life.
Yeah, hopefully it's broken now, though.
Yeah.
I don't want any more.
I mean, you haven't been in any fights since I've seen you, unless you've been getting in them on the DL.
No, just boxing. We just boxed at the gym.
Well, so it sounds like your childhood was pretty crazy. You grew up in a trailer. You got in fights. Your stepdad tried to attack you, maybe kill you. You were around drugs. You got robbed at knife point. I want to talk about your near-death experience. When I was growing up, I grew up as a Christian. My mom used to play these testimonies for me, and they were about people who had legally died, and then they would get revived like 30 minutes later, and she would always play these. They're all over YouTube if you go look up near-death experience.
Yeah.
And everyone who dies, they would either report going to like a heaven or a hell, and my mom would play these for me, and to me it was one of the most powerful things, because it seems like the closest thing to sure evidence that you can get on this world of God's existence. You had a moment where you nearly died and came face to face with God. How did you have that moment, and what was it like?
Yeah, so I think this was 3 days after moving to California.
Yeah.
I found myself at a party because my intentions when moving to California was to party, to surf, and to get girls.
Yeah.
I cared about nothing else. That's all I knew about California. Like I said, I wasn't Christian before this. I didn't know God. I had no morals, no moral compass, anything like that. I found myself at a party, the wrong place at the wrong time, and there was a mechanical bull. And growing up in rodeos, I was thinking, I'm gonna show all these kids up. I'm gonna ride the bull forever. All the girls are gonna want me after this. And sure enough, that's not what happened. I was on the bull, and some drunk kids were controlling it, and they were spinning it around in a circle as fast and fast and fast as it would go.
Yeah.
And I knew that when I flew off of it, that they were not going to be able to hit the red stop button.
Yeah.
And then it was going to hit me.
Yeah.
And so I flew off of it, and the horns, the bull, because it had like big plastic horns, like PVC pipe or something, hit me in the back of the head, struck me, completely split my head open, like wide open, a couple inches.
Yeah.
And I was bleeding everywhere. My back was covered in blood. My jacket's covered in blood. My stomach, everything is covered in blood. I'm sitting on a cooler, and a fight broke out. Because about an hour after this had happened, we were trying to figure out how to get myself to the hospital. I was slowly fading in and out of consciousness, getting worse and worse as I lost more blood. And the people who were at the party, they didn't want to get snitched on. So they were like, you cannot go anywhere. If you want your head fixed, we'll super glue it for you. They poured like a whole bottle of rubbing alcohol on it, and I just like sat there. I was like, whatever. And then like a fight broke out all of a sudden, because my friends were arguing that we needed to call an ambulance and that I needed to be taken to the hospital immediately before I died. And all of a sudden the fight broke out. I knew that if I got punched one time that I was certainly dead. And at this point I'm already thinking that I'm certainly dead. So a punch is just, it's gonna send me over the top. I crawled underneath the legs of a tall person, and I stood up out of the crowd of people, and I just instantly like felt the biggest rush of adrenaline, of anxiety, of sadness, and of like scarcity that I've ever felt in my life. Like way beyond anything I've ever felt. And at that very moment, everything just went black. I turned off and I fell. And once everything went black, I was a little kid again, like a baby. And I relived my entire life, all 18 years of life, from when I was a baby, vividly, to that very point in time where I was at that party. And it was the same exact life that I grew up living.
Yeah.
Like, no part of it was different to me in this dream state. I was just living my same life.
Can I ask a question? Was it like a rapid fire image through all of it, or did it feel slow, or what did it feel like going through those years?
It didn't feel like it took 18 years to get through that time, but it didn't feel slow by any means. It felt like I was in there for months.
Like almost that the time wasn't real.
Yeah.
Almost that you could see your whole life in whatever it was, 10 or so minutes, but you weren't, like, the fathoming of time wasn't even just, like, so it's almost hard to explain.
Yeah. Time wasn't really like, it wasn't of the essence in this, in this story. I don't know where it was, or like, it was pretty hard to like keep track of something like that, especially when your brain's all foggy and messed up. So I didn't really know what was going on. All I knew is that like my life is just replaying before my eyes. And all of a sudden I woke up and I was in a car, and there was a dude punching the window right in front of me, like trying to break into the car and get me out. My friend Ryan, he was in the back seat. He got his head slammed in the car door by somebody. And there was a girl driving. She put it in reverse, and a lot of the people tried to block the car from getting out. And she just floored it. Got out of there. No one was hit. No one was hurt. Then we got a police escort to the hospital.
And where does God come in this equation?
Oh, my bad. Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, no, that was my fault. I should have. So, like, I think right at the moment of beginning to relive my life.
Yeah.
As soon as things switched off, I went from feeling the most anxious, the most scared, and the most sad that I've ever felt in my life.
Yeah.
To the most joy, the most peace, and the most loved that I've ever felt in my life. And I never saw God. God never spoke to me audibly.
Yeah.
But I knew that there was a God. Like, I knew he was real, and I didn't know what it was. But at the very end of all my memories, he sent me back and told me that I still had a purpose on this earth.
Yeah.
Whether I believed that I had a purpose on this earth or not, like, God told me I had a purpose and that I still had something to do here on this earth before I could die.
But it wasn't audible. It was just like a feeling on your heart, and then you got sent back into your body.
Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of people get like God kind of twisted. It's like I've heard stories like, yo, dude, God pulled up and it was like this massive thing in the sky, and then he like spoke to me in my left ear, and then all of a sudden I felt tingles in my pinky toe. And I just don't feel like that's how like God really speaks to us. It was a knowing.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I also think, like, I've listened to a lot of near-death experiences, and I feel like there are people who have that audible encounter with God. But so you wake up, eventually the crazy night goes on, you make it to the hospital, you wake up, and you now acknowledge that there is a God. So you went from no acknowledging of God to there is a God.
Yeah, there is a God. I don't know who he is. I don't know where he is. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know how to follow him, but I knew that there was a God.
And did you have an urge to go look for him or to go follow him? Or at first, was it just like, oh, it exists?
It began with conviction. I think it began with feeling a little bit uneasy about some of the choices and things that I was consuming. At the time, I was in like a really unhealthy relationship. And I just felt a lot of conviction in that relationship that I wasn't where I was like supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I started feeling conviction, like smoking weed and then drinking alcohol and then getting with girls. Like all of these things that normally would feel good, all of a sudden started to feel kind of icky.
Yeah.
And not that they were bad, but it just didn't feel like it was for me. Yeah. And so I think, oh crap, mind fart. That's the question.
So, okay, so you start to get this conviction.
Yeah.
How do you go from I acknowledge there is a God to I believe in Jesus, I identify as a Christian? How did you go from that point to that point?
Okay, that's easy. So, I believe that there was a God. I knew that there was a God. Didn't know where, who, what, but there is a God. At the time, I got myself into a really unhealthy relationship, like I was saying. And then my mom was on the verge of suicide.
Yeah.
So she started getting into cocaine. And she was coming to my room like all the time, telling me how she was going to take her life.
Yeah.
That she didn't want to be alive no more. My stepdad came to our house in California with a gun and was stalking us for days on end at our house. Like I said, we're eating off of rewashed plastic silverware and cardboard plates. The food that we're eating was not nutritious when we're even eating food at that. So like the best thing that we would ever eat is maybe like a packet of ramen with the seasoning that it comes with. Oh dang, it's starting to pour, huh?
Rick.
Be quick.
No, I think we should be good.
Okay.
I think these fuzz balls should protect our mics.
And then like after all this stuff is happening, I got robbed. And it's just like one thing led to the next, led to the next, led to the next. And I found myself at a point in life where I had nothing. Like I didn't feel that I had a purpose in life. I didn't feel that what I was doing in life was fulfilling me. And I didn't believe that I had any sort of like connection with anybody that was holding me to this earth. Like I didn't feel loved and supported the way I needed to be. So at that time I said I was going to take my life. My mom had already been talking about taking her life, and I couldn't deal with the fact that my mom was even considering the fact that she would take her life. And I didn't have a dad around. My grandma, who was my lifeline, passed away a few years prior. I have no family, no friends out here because my only friend was my girlfriend. And she broke up with me. All of a sudden, she's like, "Hey, I'm going to college. I don't think this is gonna work out later." And then like blocks me on everything. Long-term relationship just completely cuts me out of her life instantaneously. And at that time, I was like, "Oh heck yeah, perfect. No one literally no one cares about me. This is the perfect time to take my life. Like screw it, I'm done." And I'm scrolling on social media, and I remember this visit. I'm in bed. It's really late at night. I'm sobbing, and I'm so angry, and I'm so frustrated, and I don't know what to do. And I stop on this video on TikTok, and that video is of Daybreak Youth, and it's a bunch of kids in a mosh pit, like worshiping Jesus. I'm talking a mosh pit, like they're throwing each other. There's people crowd surfing off the stage. It's insane. And I was like, whoa, okay, if this is what church is like, I'm trying to be there. And I messaged the page, and I was like, yo, do you guys have any like young adult things or anything like that? And they're like, yeah, pull up tomorrow. So the next day, I'm like, all right, God, I never prayed to you before. I've never, my relationship with you is non-existent. I don't even want a relationship with myself or this earth. Like, I want to be completely erased. And I was like, but God, if you are real, show up. Show up tomorrow. Like, I dare you. And if you're not real, I'm going to take my life. And I show up the next day, nervous as all get out. I hated it, bro. I was in such a shell because of all the things that were happening. I hated talking to people, nothing like that. I pull up, and for some reason, I just felt like a divine confidence. Like, I was like, I'm ready to approach any of these people right now. And I started making friends and talking to people. And I was like, whoa, I can actually talk to people. And they like me, and they think like that I'm cool, and that what I'm doing is cool, and they're interested by me, and they're curious. And so we talked a little bit, and then after that, I was like, this is my home church. Like within the first day, I got prayed over, I got prophesied over. I was like, God is real. God just saved me. I don't want to kill myself anymore. I want to help my mom get to a point where she feels the same way that I do, to where we're both healing, we're both on fire for God. And in that very moment, within a split second of meeting the community, I knew that God was real. I knew that I wanted a relationship with him. And I knew that the people who are in this community were going to lead me to a relationship with God. That I didn't know how to start my relationship with God, but that if I just hung out around those people enough, that they would show me, and that they would lead me by example of what it looks like to live a Christ-like life, and what it looks like just to give your life to Christ.
Dude, you said so many things that I want to comment on, but I need to break this down because this is gold. First off, I want to point something out, is that when you scrolled on TikTok and you saw that video, that is such a big deal to me, because chances are that's a video from a Christian page and a little church in Carlsbad. That video probably had less than 5,000 views.
Oh yeah, I think I had like 700 and something like that.
I bet, yeah, 700 views. You never know who's watching. And this is important with this podcast. It's important with you. that those 700 views changed your life.
Yeah.
And I try to keep stuff like that in mind, that this podcast can be viewed by 7 people, and it could change someone's life. And so if you're ever posting something, keep that in mind, that this guy's life was saved by 700 views and saved by a little piece of art that Daybreak decided to put out, which is our church. I wanted to acknowledge that before asking questions. The question I do want to ask is that, and some of you might not know the word prophesize. Prophesize, like when someone comes and they have a feeling from God about your life.
Mm-hmm.
You said you got prophesied on the first time you ever went to church. What did they say about you?
So I heard the sermon, and instantly, like, the sermon just hit home.
What was the sermon about?
Dude, I couldn't tell you exactly what it was about, but it pertained to just like anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
I think is the 2 main talking points there, and the pastor just explained like how those things are not from God.
Yeah.
And I had realized that my entire life I was believing the lie that the enemy told me, like that I wasn't enough, and that I had anxiety, and that I was depressed, and for so many years I had been believing those things, and in the split second the pastor had said those things, and I instantly knew that those things were not true.
Yeah.
And then he came up to me and he approached me afterwards, and then what I would consider like the most popular, good-looking dude out of all the church, like came out of his group, his little clique, and he started to converse with me, which I was super surprised about, because you never expect like the most popular person to talk to you.
Yeah.
And normally they have their clique and their thing, and that's what they do. And then I'm found with like this kid and the pastor, which was his dad.
Yeah.
And they asked me if they could pray for me. They prayed for me, and they were like, "You're gonna live a long life.
Yeah.
You're gonna live a good life, and the things that are not healed from right now are you're going to find healing in those things, and you're going to overcome them." And then the last thing that they said was like, "You are gonna be a vessel and a light for your family, so that you can guide your family out of that dark place. And God is going to use you as a light, and through God, you're going to be light to get your family out of those dark places."
Dude, wow. And I mean, I'm just imagining like this world you're coming from, just from complete chaos to like complete chaos and hopelessness to one day and hope. Did you, when they prophesied that over you, did you believe it? Like,
yeah. Like I didn't believe it, I knew it.
Dude,
It was such a God thing. Like there are some things that just can't be explained. And there were certain words that they used that it's just like, there's no way that was just some random person speaking a bunch of random facts over my life, and that they could know those particular things.
It wasn't no fortune cookie.
No. It's not Panda Express. It's legit.
And I want to commentate on something. I firmly believe that when I've had a couple friends have near-death experiences, and I believe that when you go through a lot of trauma, and especially if you have a near-death experience, I believe that you have a connection to God. It's easier to have a stronger connection because there's so much faith when you have a moment where life flashes before your eyes, or you meet God. Like, it's a level of faith that you almost... It's not that you can't attain it in other ways, but it's like my faith is fully built on experiences of this world. And so when you have like an outer world experience, it gives you like a crazy level of faith. And like, I want to even say I started this podcast off, and I want to make this freaking clear. Like, this kid, with all the trauma he had, with all the fights, with all the horrible things he did, like you in our like little young adults group are like my biggest Christian influence, which is just crazy because you didn't even grow up Christian. But like, I've watched him pray over people, over homeless people, over people in our church, over people, and it's just been like so inspiring to me. I remember I told him once, my brother's like a really bad alcoholic, and he was about to go to rehab, and my family had supported him so much, and he was just... Every time he'd come to our house, he would drink my parents' alcohol. We were enabling him, so we made him sleep in a tent outside of our house before he went to rehab. And I had gone to this homeless outreach with Cole just a day prior, and he prayed over all these homeless people. And I remember just being like, dude, that's how you do prayer. That's like conviction. Like, this guy really loves people, and he loves God. And I literally went to my brother, and I prayed over him just like you prayed over those homeless people. And it was funny because I prayed over just him. And by the time I was done praying, my entire family from wherever they were in the house had like migrated down and they like made it their way out and to pray with me. And it was like, in my opinion, was the best prayer I ever did. And that's like kind of how my family praised me, as if, and it was really just a model off of your prayer. So it's so crazy because that when they prophesied over you and they said like, you're going to be this light, like, I mean, I only met you like a couple of months ago and you've already been that light for me and through me into my family, and I know into your family. And so like, it's really incredible to see that it's true. Like what God told you is already coming true. And I know it's already going to be more.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that. And same goes for you, dude. There's like, there's people where like you show up at a social gathering and there's one or two people usually that you're going to be like stoked to see.
Yeah.
You know, like whenever you go somewhere, there's going to be people who you're like, oh, I don't want to see them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's going to be a hassle.
Yeah.
But then there's always like one or two people that are just like consistent lights.
Yeah.
And you're definitely one of those people where it's like every time go to church, every time you show up somewhere, it's just like you can always expect like positivity and just like a loving kind of affirmation from you. Like everything that you do is just, it's intentional is how I would say. Yeah.
Dude, I appreciate that a lot. I mean, it means a lot. Could you talk about like the juxtaposition between, because you still deal with a lot of that trauma. You still have like, I remember once I kind of was looking at your life and I was like, oh, so it's all sunshine and rainbows now. And you're like, not necessarily. Like I still struggle with a lot of things, but you told me about how when you walk into church, you feel so at home, like it's a place you belong. Could you describe that juxtaposition between like the chaos of life and the home of church?
Mm-hmm. So I think that like,
it's a hard question.
no, it's good. That's a good question. Like, the enemy is always going to try and attack and steal the things that you have, right?
Yeah.
And I've always, there's always been a lot of things kind of like prowling around me, a lot of things like trying to take what I have. And so coming from that and kind of feeling endangered all the time, where like I have to keep my
Guard up.
Yeah, always having to keep my guard up, and now transitioning from that to a church that's like designed for you to let your guard down and to be vulnerable with people is something that I had to like completely unlearn. And it's still to this day, it's like really hard to, think about some of the things that I've gone through, and to like, sometimes I find myself dwelling in a lot of the things that I've gone through.
Yeah.
And then I'll go to a place like church and I'll look at people, and for a split second, I'll think, dang, like none of these people have a single clue about anything, and they all just look so happy.
Yeah.
And they all got really nice clothes on, and they drove here in their nice car.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so far from the truth. And when I started to allow myself to become vulnerable with some of the higher ups at church, like some people that actually had influence who I looked up to, some of the pastors, I started to realize that we're all the same.
Yeah.
And that, yeah, maybe I've experienced a few different things than other people, but there's always one thing that you're going to be able to like relate on. And I think that it's helped me so much to just like every person I meet, I come across at church.
Yeah.
I'm always relating to them on something.
Yeah.
And that kind of, how would I say it? Like, that doesn't make me feel like I'm in a pinch or like stuck between two worlds. Right? Like I'm just receiving God's love. And then when I feel attacked or when I feel like I'm combated with a trial or tribulation, I'm just understanding, knowing that I've done this so many times before, where it's like, this is nothing new. It's going to pass. Like it might last a week, but there's no point. I'm just going to go to church and put my hands up. I'm going to love the God that loves me, and I'm going to hang out with my friends and enjoy the life that God's given me, not dwelling too much on the lies that the enemy likes to speak.
It's, what I think is really interesting is that I always say that no career is untouchable by God and no person is unusable by God, in the sense that like sometimes I used to feel, I would listen to success stories, and these aren't even necessarily Christian success stories. These are like YouTubers I like, or podcasters, or professional sports players, and they go through some really traumatic time and they're broke, or they grew up getting in fights and now they're this hero. And I used to always think, well, I didn't grow up getting in fights, or I didn't like go through this like specifically traumatic childhood. And I used to feel like I almost like couldn't be successful if I didn't have that trauma. And what I'm realizing now, and especially like watching my alcoholic brother, he had a different dad, an abusive dad who was an alcoholic, and he became an alcoholic, and he's in rehab right now. Watching my mom's dad, she didn't know her dad. He ran away at birth. She ended up getting like serious illnesses, lived a lot of her life sick. And like I'm realizing now that like you're like, even in church they said those two words, all things. When you submit to the love of God, he will use all things. Even the sinful things, even the ways you messed up, he will use that. So it's like I tell my brother who's an alcoholic, I'm like, bro, you one day will have a story for people that I don't have. I wasn't an alcoholic. I can't relate to those people the way you can. And my mom will have a story for those sick people, for those people who went through abusive childhood traumas that I don't have that story. I can't relate to those people. And you have a story of getting in fight. I hope that someone who needs to hear their stories listening.
I hope so
but there is a portion of people that you can reach. It's not that I can't talk to them, but my story doesn't resonate with them. And there's a portion of people who want to be podcasters, who want to be YouTubers or whatever, and they can relate to me. And that's like the beautiful thing is that when you submit to God, he doesn't just use your good moments. He doesn't just use Cole that walked into church. He uses Cole that got beat up by his dad and almost died on that bull and got robbed at knife point. He uses that Cole to speak to people. And that's just like such a glorious and great thing.
I think there's a reason why God gave every disciple a new name. It's because like the lives that they were living previous to meeting God and Jesus were completely different. And like Paul killed Christians. And then Paul was used to write the majority of the New Testament. And for us to just think for even a split second that we can't be used by God because we've just gone too far, or we haven't gone far enough for that matter either. Like I don't have enough trauma or enough things to fuel me, or I have too much and now it's like weighing me down and now I can't get out of it. I think that like God loves both and that God will use both. And like God loves to love, and he's not just going to let you like be hopeless and wander around.
Absolutely. No, I really believe that. And I even believe that like, it's like, I like to talk about with industries too. Let's take like the most ungodly industry. I would say maybe like adult entertainment. It's like, Jesus walked around with prostitutes and he said like these prostitutes that acknowledge their sinners, like they can be saved too. And they have a story that relate, like I wish I could reference someone, but unfortunately I don't, or fortunately I don't know adult film stars, but it's like, there's no reason that God can't take someone from that industry and they're now a light to all those people in which I would never be able to relate to them. And it's just like, I like to say like literally nothing, no industry is untouchable by God. I don't know where I'm going with this, but let's jump into, since all this has happened and I just spoke on like your power of prayer and like the way you impacted me, what are some of the like miraculous moments you've had praying over other people?
So I don't know what the viewers will think of this, but we'll talk about it. We were at a homeless outreach and we approached a group of homeless people. One of them was on the ground and he saw that I had a Bible with me. So he frantically started asking for the Bible, like that he needed it. And so we gave him the Bible, and then he started voicing to us that he had stage 6 prostate cancer and that he was supposed to die, that he wasn't even supposed to be alive for as long as he was. He was addicted to like doing drugs, like smoking meth and things like that because of the pain that he was feeling due to the cancer. And he had no way to like get it treated because he's homeless. And he had no way to like suppress the pain, so he would turn to drugs. And he told me like that's not what he wanted to do. He knows God is real, but he couldn't stop doing them. And he grabs my hands firmly, and he looks me in the eyes. He tells me, "I need you to pray for me right now." And then he lets go. He grabs a crack pipe, and he's trying to push the crack pipe away from him as it's going to his face, and he's yelling at me, "I don't want to do this. This is not me. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this." He takes a hit of the pipe and then throws it, like aggressively, just throws it. And he grabs my hands as hard as he could, like a I don't even know how to explain. He gripped my hand so hard I thought they were gonna break, and he just starts like speaking in a demonic language. Like, it was evil. You could tell it was loud. He was screaming at the top of his lungs. It was evil. Like, you felt heavy. There was a girl behind me, and she started to panic a little bit. It was pretty like intense situation, and I felt like God say, like, you need to pray for this person, and like, you need to let me be me in here.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing that you can do about this, but I can do everything about this, and you need to let me like step in. And so I started speaking in tongues over this person, and like casting out whatever was inside of him. Some may believe it was true, some may think it's just a joke or whatever, but like, you could feel a tangible release of darkness from this man's body, and as he's squeezing and gripping my hands, he's getting harder and harder and harder. I could feel like darkness creep into my arms. Like, you could feel evil coming into my body and overtaking my body, and then all at once God pushed it out, and the man was cured from whatever was the spirit was inside of him. He fell to the ground crying, convulsing on the ground, freaking out. He picked up both of my shoes and was kissing and cleaning my shoes, telling me that like the God of gods just used me, and that I was a vessel of the God of gods, and that like all this crazy stuff. And he was screaming, crying, telling me, did you see that? Did you see that? I'm thinking, what? My eyes were closed, homie. I was praying for you. And he's like, no, do you feel it, man? Like, it's gone. It's gone. It's gone. It's gone. And he's jumping around. He's dancing ecstatically, kissing my shoes, freaking out, like shaking me. And he's like, the spirit that was overtaking my body, the one that had been dwelling inside me for so many years, is gone. God is good. God is good. And he's running around praising God, screaming. He's like, I'm sober. I'm so, like, he was telling us that he was sober when he just took a hit out of a thing. And you could tell, like, he went from being high to being sober. There was a noticeable difference in his like character, like a big noticeable difference.
Dude, it's funny because I'm sure that this sounds very woo-woo, and that a lot of viewers or people would be surprised by this, but if you believe in the Bible, these things are in the Bible, and it says that if you are a true follower of me, and if you have faith, that you will do these things too. And I absolutely believe it's true, but that is just a surreal experience. What was speaking in tongues like? Like, did you know what you were saying, or was it just like you're just like?
No, so the way I could talk about tongues for a long time.
Hold on, let me explain this in case they don't know. Speaking in tongue, actually, I might not even know myself, but you can correct me. It's like when God speaks through you, and you're like making noises, and it's like a language that you yourself don't understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we see tongues used in the Bible a lot, and a lot of people think that it's just a prayer. Yeah. Like, sometimes you just pray in tongues. I've done like a lot of research on this stuff, and tongues isn't something that was used to just like, oh, all of a sudden God overtook me and I'm just praying over somebody in tongues now, and it's God speaking. It's a thing that God gifts different people with, so where they are able to pray and communicate with people who don't speak their language, in a language they don't speak themselves. Yeah. But in this specific case, the guy had been speaking some form of like demonic language. Yeah. And I believe that's why God used me to speak tongues in that situation, because I wasn't, prophesizing over him in a different language or praying for him in his language, because he spoke English as well. Yeah. But there was a demonic force inside of that man, and it was combated with tongues.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Tongues is a trippy thing.
I've had no experiences with it, so.
Come to camp. I can't, bro.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. I like to end all my podcasts. So, I forgot to say this at the beginning of the podcast, but I guess I'll say it now. Yeah. My mission my why behind the podcast is I want to inspire people to invest in soul wealth. So not the classic wealth, which is building up your money, possessions, and achievements, but soul wealth, which is investing in your relationships and creating memories. And part of that soul wealth equation, in my eyes, is a relationship with God. That is when I say investing in your relationships, to me, that is the highest form relationship. But I also think that even if you're not a Christian, even if you're an atheist, that your life will be better if you focus on relationships rather than money, possessions, and wealth. To kind of reverse engineer for this, I like to ask people, what do they want to be remembered for? When you die, what do you want people to say about you?
Oh man, that's tough. When I die, what do I want people to remember me as or say about me?
Take your time.
Part of me wants to say this cliche answer where it's like, you get to heaven and God says, well done, good and faithful servant.
Yeah.
But if I had to pick something like...
You're the first person to answer from the perspective of what God says about you, which is cool.
Dang. Oh, man, I think I really want to be remembered as like a light in a dark space.
Yeah.
There's been so many times in my life where I was in a really dark place, and one person, one little smile, one little laugh brought me out of that. And I think it's so important that we have lights in our life, and that there are people who are just like you just gravitate towards and want to be around because of how excited and curious they are about life. And I would love to die having people remembered me as like, dang, I remember that one time when I was like down bad, my girlfriend just broke up with me, and then Cole was like, yo bro, my girlfriend just broke up with me 2 weeks ago, but I'm trying this whole church thing out and it's super sick, and I'm going surfing tomorrow and skating the next day. And it's like, I hope people just remember me as a light.
Yeah.
And like, no matter how dark their life gets, just want it to be a little bit lighter.
I will say you have always been a light in my life, and through everything I've asked you to do, you've just been so supportive. When I knew this was a heavy story to share on a podcast, and a lot of people would never even share this with close friend or family, but to come on and share it on my podcast is awesome. The way you've taught me how to pray was a light in my life, and just the way you've embraced me and invited me, and you helped. Well, my car tire blew up. It was supposed to be like a horrible day, and you came and fixed it. You told me your life story. It was one of my favorite days at church. And yeah, you've turned you turned that specific dark day to a bright day. You helped me pray. Like, I've only known you a couple months, and you've been a huge light on my life, and I'm sure other people could say the same. And bro, I'm so happy you came on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Wrap up.
Good.
Shout out Daybreak.
Hey, let's go Daybreak.
All right.